When Ambassador Chen couldn't find anyone at the embassy who spoke Mandarin, the last person he expected help from was the cafeteria worker who served his coffee every morning.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and a comment before we start to learn more about what happened.
The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of the United States Embassy in Geneva, Switzerland. At 7:30 a.m., the building hummed with the quiet efficiency of international diplomacy, preparing for another day of global significance. Security guards checked credentials, administrative staff reviewed overnight cables, and in the basement cafeteria, Keisha Williams wiped down stainless steel counters with the same methodical precision she had used for the past 3 years. Keisha arrived at work every morning at 6 a.m. sharp. She prepared coffee urns, arranged pastries in neat rows, and set up the salad bar that would serve hundreds of embassy personnel throughout the day. At 48, she had learned to move through the world quietly, efficiently, without drawing attention to herself. The diplomats, intelligence officers, and administrative staff who filed through her line each day saw her uniform first, a simple blue dress with a white apron, and rarely looked beyond it. But today would be different. Today, Keisha's carefully constructed invisibility would shatter, revealing a truth that would leave the most powerful people in the building speechless. The first sign of trouble came at 8:15 a.m. when Keisha noticed unusual activity on the upper floors. Through the cafeteria's service windows, she could see security personnel moving more purposefully than usual, their radios crackling with urgent, hushed conversations. Embassy staff members clustered in small groups, their faces tight with concern. Ambassador Patricia Hayes, the embassy's deputy chief of mission, burst through the cafeteria doors at 8:32 a.m. Her usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, jacket askew, hair falling loose from its professional arrangement. Behind her followed three men Keisha recognized as senior staff members, all looking equally frazzled. "We need the conference room," Ambassador Hayes announced to no one in particular. "Clear everyone out. Now." Keisha continued stacking clean plates, but her ears were tuned to every word. In her 3 years at the embassy, she had never seen this level of barely controlled panic among the senior staff. "The Chinese delegation arrives in 40 minutes, one of the men was saying. "We can't postpone." "And our interpreter just called in sick," another added, his voice tight with frustration. "Food poisoning. She can't even speak, much less translate." Ambassador Hayes pressed her palms against her temples. "This is a disaster. The technology transfer agreement depends on this meeting. If we can't communicate effectively with Ambassador Chen—" "What about the backup interpreter?" the third man asked. "On vacation in Morocco. Completely unreachable." Keisha watched as the group's composure began to crack. The Chinese delegation was arriving to finalize a critical trade agreement that had been months in the making. Without proper translation services, the entire negotiation could collapse, potentially damaging relationships between the two nations. "We could try video conferencing with an interpreter in Washington," someone suggested. Ambassador Hayes shook her head. The time difference, the connection delays, the security protocols for classified discussions. It's not feasible for something this sensitive. As the group continued their increasingly desperate brainstorming session, Keisha quietly finished her morning setup. She had heard every word, understood every implication. But she also knew that in their world she was invisible. The idea that someone like her might have a solution would never occur to them. At 9:10 a.m., the Chinese delegation arrived. Ambassador Chen Wei led the group, a distinguished man in his late 50s, with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. His entourage included two junior diplomats, a trade specialist, and a translator who, Keisha realized with growing concern, appeared to be struggling with English. The Americans greeted their guests with professional courtesy, but Keisha could see the strain beneath their diplomatic smiles. They were walking into one of the most important negotiations of the year without the ability to communicate effectively. The meeting began in the embassy's main conference room, directly above the cafeteria. Keisha could hear the muffled sounds of conversation, punctuated by long, uncomfortable pauses and the occasional frustrated sigh that carried through the building's ventilation system. 15 minutes into the meeting, Ambassador Hayes appeared in the cafeteria doorway again, this time accompanied by David Richardson, the embassy's political affairs officer. They spoke in hushed, urgent tones. The Chinese translator is competent, but he's clearly struggling with the technical terminology, Richardson was saying. Ambassador Chen is getting visibly frustrated with the delays and miscommunications. We need someone who can handle complex economic and legal language in both directions, Ambassador Hayes replied. This isn't just casual conversation. We're dealing with intellectual property law, technology transfer protocols, trade regulations. Keisha continued cleaning tables, but her mind was racing. She understood exactly what they needed, and she could provide it. But she also knew the risk involved in speaking up. These people had worked alongside her for 3 years without ever truly seeing her. Would they listen to her now, or would they dismiss her as an overreaching service worker who didn't understand her place? At 9:45 a.m., the decision was made for her. The conference room doors opened abruptly, and Ambassador Chen stormed out, clearly agitated. His voice carried down the hallway as he spoke rapidly in Mandarin to his aide, his tone sharp with frustration and disappointment. Keisha understood every word he was saying. This is unacceptable. How can they expect to negotiate complex international agreements without proper translation services? We're wasting valuable time, and the Americans are losing face with every miscommunication. The Chinese delegation gathered in the lobby, clearly preparing to leave. Ambassador Hayes and her team looked on helplessly as 3 months of careful diplomatic preparation appeared to be collapsing in real time. That's when Keisha made her choice. She removed her apron with steady hands, smoothed her uniform dress, and walked up the stairs from the cafeteria to the main floor. Her heart pounded, but her steps were firm and purposeful. "Excuse me," she said, approaching Ambassador Hayes. The ambassador turned, her expression showing surprise at seeing the cafeteria worker upstairs during work hours. "Keisha, this really isn't the time." Ambassador Chen is upset because he feels the Americans are not taking the negotiations seriously, Keisha said in clear, unaccented English. He believes the lack of proper translation services shows disrespect for the importance of the agreement. Ambassador Hayes blinked, processing not just Keisha's words, but the fact that she had spoken them at all. "I'm sorry, what did you—" He's telling his aide that they should return to Beijing and consider whether the Americans are serious partners for this technology transfer, Keisha continued, her voice growing more confident. He says the miscommunications are making both sides lose face, and that continuing under these circumstances would be counterproductive. The hallway fell silent. Ambassador Hayes stared at Keisha as if seeing her for the first time. "How do you know what he's saying?" Richardson asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because I speak Mandarin," Keisha replied simply, "along with Cantonese, Spanish, French, German, Arabic, and Portuguese." The silence that followed was so complete that Keisha could hear the ventilation system humming in the walls. Ambassador Hayes looked as if she had been struck by lightning. "You speak 7 languages?" Richardson asked, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "Fluently," Keisha confirmed. "I also understand the legal and economic terminology being used in your negotiations. I have a master's degree in international relations from Georgetown University and a bachelor's degree in economics from Howard University." Ambassador Chen, who had been watching the exchange with growing curiosity, approached the group. He said something in Mandarin, and Keisha responded smoothly in the same language, her tone respectful and diplomatic. "What did he say?" Ambassador Hayes asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He asked if I work for the embassy, and I explained that I do, in the cafeteria. He's surprised." Keisha paused, then added, "He says he would be honored if I could assist with the translation services, if that would be acceptable to the American delegation." Ambassador Hayes looked around the hallway as if she had stepped into an alternate reality. "You've been working in our cafeteria for 3 years." "Yes." "And you have advanced degrees in international relations and economics?" "Yes." "And you speak 7 languages fluently?" "Yes." "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Keisha's expression softened slightly. "With respect, Ambassador Hayes, you never asked. In 3 years, no one has ever asked me about my background, my education, or my capabilities. You see the uniform and assume that's all there is to see." The truth of her words hung heavy in the air. Ambassador Hayes had the grace to look ashamed. "Would you be willing to help us?" she asked finally. "Of course. It would be my honor to serve my country in whatever capacity is needed." Within 10 minutes, Keisha had been briefed on the sensitive aspects of the negotiation and sworn to confidentiality. She changed from her cafeteria uniform into a professional outfit that Ambassador Hayes provided and took her place at the conference table between the two delegations. What followed was the most fluid, effective diplomatic communication the embassy had seen in years. Keisha didn't just translate words. She conveyed nuance, cultural context, and the subtle implications that make international negotiations successful. When technical terms arose, she provided accurate translations in both directions, often offering additional context that helped both sides understand complex concepts. Ambassador Chen was visibly impressed. During a brief recess, he spoke quietly with Keisha in Mandarin, praising her linguistic skills and cultural sensitivity. She responded with the kind of nuanced diplomatic language that typically takes years to master. "What's he saying now?" Ambassador Hayes asked. Keisha smiled. "He's saying that the American embassy clearly values excellence and cultural understanding, given the quality of their translation services. He's impressed by the level of professionalism." "And what did you tell him?" "I thanked him for his kind words and assured him that the American government takes this partnership very seriously." The negotiation, which had been on the verge of collapse 3 hours earlier, was successfully concluded by 2 p.m. Both sides signed preliminary agreements, and Ambassador Chen personally thanked Keisha for her exceptional service. After the Chinese delegation departed, Ambassador Hayes asked Keisha to join her in her office. "I owe you an apology," the ambassador began. "Actually, we all do. We made assumptions about you based on your job title, and those assumptions were not only wrong, they were insulting." Keisha nodded gracefully. "I understand how it happened. People see what they expect to see." "But why were you working in the cafeteria? With your qualifications, you could have applied for any number of positions in the State Department." Keisha's expression grew more serious. "I tried, Ambassador Hayes. I submitted applications for translator positions, political affairs roles, economic analyst positions. My applications were consistently rejected or simply ignored. After 2 years of trying, I needed work, and the cafeteria position was available. Did anyone ever interview you?" Number, I believe my name and background led to assumptions about my capabilities before anyone looked at my actual qualifications. Ambassador Hayes closed her eyes, understanding the full implications. "We discriminated against you in hiring, and then we compounded that discrimination by ignoring your potential for 3 years. Perhaps, but today showed that excellence has a way of revealing itself when the need arises. What can we do to make this right?" Keisha considered the question. Evaluate people based on their capabilities, not their current circumstances. Ask questions. Look deeper. There may be others in this building whose potential has been overlooked. Over the following weeks, Keisha's role at the embassy transformed completely. She was promoted to senior language specialist and cultural liaison, with a salary that reflected her education and expertise. More importantly, Ambassador Hayes instituted a comprehensive review of hiring practices and began conducting skills assessments for current employees who might have been overlooked. The technology transfer agreement that Keisha helped negotiate was eventually signed by both governments, leading to significant economic benefits for both nations. Ambassador Chen specifically requested that Keisha be assigned to future negotiations involving Chinese partnerships. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. The embassy staff began to see their colleagues, all of them, as complete human beings with potential contributions beyond their job titles. The maintenance worker who spoke 4 languages became part of the cultural briefing team. The security guard with a master's degree in Middle Eastern studies began consulting on regional issues. 6 months later, Keisha stood in the same conference room where she had first revealed her capabilities, but now she wore a professional suit and carried diplomatic credentials. She was preparing for another high-level negotiation, this time as the embassy's lead interpreter and cultural advisor. Ambassador Hayes found her reviewing documents before the meeting. "Any nerves?" the ambassador asked. Keisha smiled. "No more than usual. I've been doing this work for years. I just wasn't being paid for it." "I've been thinking about what you said that day, about people seeing what they expect to see. It's human nature. We all do it to some extent. But we can do better." "Yes," Keisha agreed. "We can always do better." As the next delegation arrived and Keisha prepared to facilitate another complex international negotiation, she reflected on her journey. She had spent 3 years invisible, serving coffee and sandwiches to people who never saw her potential. But when the moment demanded it, her expertise had emerged, changing not just her own life but the entire culture of the institution she served. The lesson was clear. Talent and capability exist everywhere, often hidden behind assumptions and overlooked by systems that judge people by their circumstances rather than their potential. Sometimes it takes a crisis to reveal the extraordinary abilities of ordinary people who have been waiting patiently for their moment to serve. True power lies not in the position you hold, but in the knowledge you possess and the moment you choose to share it with the world.